Hello, everyone. It's 8 p.m. here in the UK, probably slightly earlier where you're watching. Welcome to the 11th episode of the Alder Hour. I'm Matt Alder, the host of the Alder Hour, and also the host of the Recruiting Future podcast. The Alder Hour is part of the Purple Acorn Network. Head over to purpleacornnetwork.com after the show if you want to find out more about the other great shows that are on the network. You can follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. And also, this episode will also be available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I'm sure lots of you are watching this not for the first time. And last week we had some great comments, people joining in. This is a live show, absolutely 100% live, unless you're watching the recording. But it's a live show right now where I am. So please, put your comments in the chat and we will try and read them out and, engage with you and comment on the things that we are talking about. And we have a great show lined up for you today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite my co-host to the stage. Hey, Rhona, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Jocelyn's going to be joining us a bit later, but for now, it's just me and you. So how's your week been going? I know it's only Monday, and it's probably Monday lunchtime, isn't it, where you are? But how's your week been going so far?
It's been going great so far, really. Lots of great news I've got this week already, so I'm happy. How about your week?
Fantastic. No, it's been a good day. It's been a good day. It's been a very long day, but it's been a good day. What do you have for us this week? What's coming up in your segment?
We're talking about student loan debt and how companies are using it as a strategic advantage. I'm not sure about that. We'll talk about it more.
Interesting. Yes, might have a few things to say about that. It's an interesting one. So, let's get stuck in and start with points and pints. Now, regular listeners, watchers, I don't know what to call the audience, but the regular members of the audience will know that in this section of the show, we have a drink and we talk about headlines that we've seen in the news. Now, for the previous 10 episodes of the Alder Hour, I have been drinking non-alcoholic beer because I have to drive home from my amazing studio. Tonight, I'm walking home, so I have a beer with alcohol in it. This is called Sun God. Thank you. Spontaneous round of applause. Oh, I do love a spontaneous round of applause. This one's called Sun God. It's by a brewery called Beavertown, which is based in London. And it's a tropical IPA, 6.3%. So I'm going to open it. There we go. And it's a big can as well. So that's probably nearer a pint than we normally have. I'm going to pour it out. Rhona, do you have a drink this week? Are you continuing with your mocktail trend?
Yes, I have another mocktail, the same free AF cocktails. This one is the cucumber gin and tonic. Yeah, so that's what I'll have.
That's a very British thing, a cucumber gin and tonic. There we are. I like that. Right, let's try it. Well, I can definitely taste the alcohol. Yeah, that's quite strong, actually. I'm not sure I'm the world's biggest fan of this. It's claims to be a tropical IPA. It's quite bitter, which I know some people like. But yeah, it's good. I'll drink it, but not sure I'll buy it again. How's the cucumber gin and tonic?
It's good. I don't know why it makes me sneeze, but it is good.
You see, you're allergic to mocktails. You'll have to have proper cocktails next time.
Yeah, maybe I need to switch.
Exactly. Right. Let's move on to our first headline, which is about mentoring. So, why employees should consider mentoring and reverse mentoring. I think this is just really important. I think it's something that I've kind of heard this time and time again. People talking about mentoring and reverse mentoring and all that kind of stuff. And I just think it should become much more normalized and easier to do, because I think the amount of talk that goes on about it versus the amount of mentoring that's actually happening, I'm sure there must be a kind of imbalance there, basically. And I think there's two bits to it. I think in sort of traditional mentoring, really learning from the benefits of people's experience is a really, really valuable thing. I would wonder what the best format for these kind of these kind of mentoring talks is these days, or how they're kind of formalized. I mean, that would be a thought of mine. But learning from people who have that experience, that's great. However, I think reverse mentoring is even more important in the world that we live in now. So reverse mentoring, if you've not come across it before, is getting someone who is newer in the workplace to you to mentor you about new ways of thinking, technology, all those kind of things. Traditionally, it's always been young people. It's always been sort of described as young people showing old people how computers work, or how phones work, or how TikTok works. But I think it's a lot. I think it's a lot more than that. I think that if you are, if you're slightly older in the workplace, like someone like me, or older, I think that things change so quickly now. I think it's vital to the longevity of the rest of your career to really understand how younger people in the workforce, people coming into the workforce, really think, because the way that they think about things is going to influence what the future of the workplace looks like. And it will allow you to plan and anticipate, and really kind of think about what the next sort of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years look like. So it's not about them teaching you about technology. It's about understanding how they think and how that's going to shape the world and the workplace. So I have a reverse mentor, which is my 9-year-old, and just watching. It's not necessarily watching how he uses digital technology and all those kind of things, but just kind of really digging into some of the cultural stuff and the things that are kind of going on YouTube, and how his generation talks about things. It is a total eye-opening revelation. I think it's really important. And I suppose my last point on this, before I ask Rhona what she thinks, is a really famous quote from Douglas Adams, the sci-fi author, about technology. And I think it applies really, really well to this. So his 3 rules of technology are: anything that was in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you're about 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably get a career in it. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. And I'm sure we've all felt like that about technology and ways of thinking about work. So I think it's just really important to get to see it through someone else's eyes. Rhona, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of mentoring. Not necessarily have been part of like formal mentoring programs, but I've always, whenever I've worked somewhere, looked for someone that's been there longer, has more experience, whether it's in the organization or outside of the organization, that can be a mentor to me. I love it, especially for remote work. I know I made a point in my own career, especially working remotely, to always be there for 1 or 2 younger colleagues, and not necessarily younger, but newer to the organization colleagues, to mentor them. Just because you just know, I think that's really the best way for onboarding, and especially in the remote world, because everyone always talks about how you can't build relationships and stuff like that, and I 100% disagree. Definitely, when you mentor, when you work together with someone, like in the smaller groups, those non-curated interactions, that's really where the magic happens. And reverse mentorship, I mean, just like you said, I don't have kids of my own, but I refer to my friends' kids as my rent-a-kids, because
Mm.
I hang out with them when their parents don't want to hang out with them. I learn a lot from the perspective that kids bring. Like, you'll just explain something. You explain to a kid, like, "What do you do for work?" And the way they summarize it, it's like, "Oh, so you do this and this and this." It's like, "Oh, wait, I hadn't thought about it that way." But just how they look at things, and it just helps you be in touch with just how younger generations are perceiving things. I think it helps you at work as a leader to be able to know how to better hire, how to better structure like onboarding and training programs and things like that when you have that interaction with people from different generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And your reverse mentor doesn't have to be of someone of school age.
Yeah.
It's like other people in the workforce and things like that. But I think it's a really interesting topic, and I think that I think it gets talked about a lot, but probably very rarely kind of formalized, particularly within organizations. So, really something worth thinking about. Right, let's move on to the next one. Here we go. Mercor, an AI recruiting startup founded by 21-year-olds, talking about reverse mentoring, raises 100 million at $2 billion valuation. I think the most interesting thing about this is how people aren't talking about it in our industry. I noticed some chat about it this week, but really it's kind of very much sort of appears to be off most people's radars. So I kind of looked into it and I tried to work out what is this, what is this company? It's claiming that it's, AI-based recruitment. What does that mean? And as far as I can tell, it is making its money in the AI sector. So it's finding people with AI skills and placing them into companies. The majority of people, I think, from what I've read, the majority of candidates are coming from India, and they're placing those skills in companies either, I presume, on a contract or a full-time basis. And then I was kind of like, well, what is this? Is this a job board? Is it a technology play? Is it a recruitment consultant? And it turns out they're charging up to 30% placement fee, salary for putting people into those jobs. So there's a few thoughts around this. It's kind of obviously it's taking someone's lunch. So
Yeah.
if I was a more traditional recruitment agency in this space, I'd be looking very, very carefully at what's kind of happening here. I did wonder whether this was this week's Klarna. If you watched the show last week, we were looking into some of the debunking of the claims of the Klarna CEO when it came to AI. But it does appear that they're using AI to source candidates, to select candidates and put shortlists through to hiring managers in companies. So there's a lot of hype around this. And I think that possibly comes from the fact it's got some very high profile Silicon Valley investors who are very good at hyping things. But also, there's some real concerns here, I suppose, about, compliance and things like that, particularly if you're kind of operating in different countries with AI making hiring decisions? Is AI drawing up a shortlist? Does this meet the legislative requirements in different parts of the US, in Europe? Some kind of questions there. So I didn't know whether this was, a massively important game-changing thing or just a kind of a piece of hype. Either way, it really indicates the direction of travel. If this much money is being raised, they claim they've already processed 300,000 candidates. So there's something very solid going on here. And yeah, does this illustrate that AI can effectively replace recruiters at this end of the funnel for some very, very specialized roles, the kind of roles that we've not seen humans kind of taken out of the loop for before? Or is it hype? Who knows? Rhona, what do you think?
I mean, this one was super interesting for me. I don't know if you know or if people listening know, but most of my career has been in talent marketplaces. I think it's a space that, and I've thought of this for a long time, that we need to watch. I think one of the biggest issues always with the different talent marketplaces was keeping up with supply and demand. So, and like accurate matching and doing it quickly. So I see it from that perspective. Like, if they figure it out, because many places I worked at, that was the main thing. We were figuring out the algorithm, the matching algorithm. So if they figured out a way to do this with AI, definitely I see them as a possibility of being successful. However, there always needs to be a human involved. And that's where I think that, yeah, for marketing purposes, they're going to say like it's 100% AI doing everything. but I think there still has to be that human listening to what the client is wanting, because let's face it, have we ever as recruiters got exactly what we needed from a hiring manager just filling out a form, or do we have to pull it out from them and ask questions in so many different ways? I think there's always going to be that human element that needs to review and refine what AI is doing. But if they've truly figured out matching, that's going to change. Like, all of the other talent marketplaces out there
Mm.
should be kind of concerned about this, and they have a lot of like backing there. But I don't know. I don't know if it's fully marketing where they're saying, I'm not scared of like recruiters losing their job. Now, will talent marketplaces have to hire less recruiters, less internal sourcers like talent matching people? Probably. But if you get the way you scale, like you get more clients and more candidates in your pool, then you can reallocate those tasks differently, right? It's not,
Mm,
you don't
mm.
spend that much time on the matching.
I was surprised that there were 300,000 candidates with high-level technical AI skills. That was one part of it. It also says that they capture performance data, and that's part of their selection, but it didn't say how they did that, which was probably quite important to know, I think.
I kind of want to apply to work there to know what they're doing.
Well, I don't think they employ anyone. There's just there's three of them and
I'm
three of them
sure
and
they
an
have
AI.
to
So
have there has to be. I said again, I think that's very cool marketing to say, but I'm sure there's more than the co-founders and AI behind this. I don't see it working otherwise.
because the question is, what are they going to spend $100 million on if there's three of them in a computer? But we will see. I think we should watch this one with interest, because I think it it is potentially a not necessarily a game changer in technology, but just a game changer in the way that people are thinking about AI and recruitment and the things it can do that humans can't do, and perhaps that might debunk this. So definitely one to watch. Thank you, Rhona. Let's move on to this evening's guest.
Matt,
Hey, Mike. Welcome to the show.
thanks for answering my call.
That's good. I love that, isn't it? It's like literally
You
like you
know,
just phoned in.
I'm just glad that my name in your phone is spelled right. So that's great.
Well, it would be terrible to spell someone's name wrong, wouldn't it? Can you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. My name is Mike Stafiej. I'm the founder of Aaron. We're an employee referral platform. We work with some of the largest businesses in the world to help fully automate everything from referral to payment for their employee referral programs.
Fantastic. Now, you've just sort of a few weeks back, you released a white paper based on the data that you have in the business. Tell us about the white paper and some of the findings.
Yeah, so we're super proud. Huge milestone for us. We did 1.1 million referrals in 2024. That number actually ended pretty exponentially. So, like the curve, just by the nature of our customers expanding into the other countries and whatnot, we expect to do at minimum 3 million this year, if not accelerated beyond that. But the cool thing about that paper is it's a very niche focus, right? Like just a million employee referrals, and the data that you can pull out of that and the insights that we got from it were pretty interesting in the sense that, and I'll tell you, I'll just be very honest and blunt, and this is even without a beer in hand. Like the way we thought people were using our product at scale in enterprise is not how they're actually using it.
Oh, interesting.
Which is a weird place to be 6 years into the game, right?
Yeah.
But like take the, and I guess partially bragging that this is the first time something like this has been done, looking at that much data, because that's not just a million referrals. That's it was almost a million new user signups, millions of users in the system, millions of jobs. Like we're hitting these enormous milestones in just database size that are giving us kind of a unique position to look and say,
Fantastic.
well, like okay, well, now we have all this data. How do we interpret it, right?
Mm. No, absolutely. I'll dig into a few more of the findings in a second. Before we do that, let's back up a little bit. Why are referrals so important? What's so powerful about referrals?
Well, I'll tell you, listening to your last segment when you're talking, I'm going to give you two parts of this, two answers to this, if you don't mind. Traditionally, referrals are really important because they are a higher converting, lower cost way of recruiting, right? So but I've never met a recruiter that was like, no, I don't want to know who that would be a really good fit for this job, right? So and there's a reason that not only do they convert higher, but they stay longer. So the retention play is really important as well, and that's just because there's a vetting process that happens through a referral that's a little bit more significant than your traditionally sourced hires. Now, in certain roles, this might be a very strategic way because of the cost, because of the speed. Nurses, for example, last year we were filling nurse roles in 21 days for our hospital systems against the national average of about 82 days. And that's because there's a community-based hiring events. They're very much speed to impact. So referrals, especially in the early 2000s, coming into the white hot hiring market, can be very strategic. It's something that everyone does, and not everyone wants to be strategic about it. But if you are strategic about it, and you look at things like cost per hire, time to fill, those are things that become really important. So traditionally, I mean, that's your run of the mill answer. Sherm will give you that. Everybody will back that one up. The interesting thing, I'm going to go off the last thing you were just talking about. $100 million for a 3-person AI startup. Sign me up. I'll be one of their scientists.
I don't know whether they've got 3 people. They were just
Yeah,
3 people. There were just 3 people in the picture. So
your question was spot on. Like, why 100 million? Like out of the gate, like why 100? Why not 50 million? Right? Not 40 million. You can do a lot with money, right? But I do think this is the trend, whether we like it or not. People are going to be investing, and I will use the word over investing in AI at the detriment of the recruiting team in terms of people. Meaning, and I'm not saying this is a good or bad thing, but you will have less recruiters in the future. It's that simple. So when that happens, I think there will be some urgency in competitiveness in keeping humans involved in that process. So referrals are really going to take kind of a place in this new AI world that's kind of different than your traditional. It might even simply a marketing scheme, like a real person's going to talk to you. That's crazy. Like there will be people hired to jobs that are never going to talk to humans. Like that will happen at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I really love this aspect of just like keeping the people involved. Like they're people businesses, so having them involved in the recruiting process makes a lot of sense, even if there's not always that dollar sign to draw from it, like I started with.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, definitely. And if referrals are obviously very important, if they're becoming even more important, what are the biggest challenges employers face when it comes to maximizing them or maximizing engagement with them?
Yeah. The bigger the business, the more complicated the business, the more challenging this becomes, right? So we work with a lot of customers that will have hundreds of thousands of employees for a single customer one is in 85 different countries, right? So, 20 different currencies, speaking 16 different languages. And this isn't a referral specific problem, but when you're that big, flattening anything and making it a single experience across the board is nearly impossible. So you need very specific ways of thinking of that problem and features to address that problem. And that's really what we bring to the table, right? So the saying like, hey, the person in Spain can refer to a job in the US is really something that hasn't been done before. So half the time when we're in these conversations, like they don't even know that that's possible. They're thinking they'll have like their separate instances, which is traditionally how people approach it. Hey, we'll have one employee referral manager in this region, one in that region, and these are very large customers, right? So that's the most obvious one that comes to mind. Is like just flattening out the complexity of the business can be challenging without very niche solutions. But across the board, even in your much smaller companies, just engagement, getting your employees to think about it, making it easy, even letting them know how to participate can be a burden for most companies. So when you think of your smallest, most basic problems, I think it always comes down to employee participation, right? When you think about your most sophisticated problems, it's wow, we're a very complex organization with very complex needs, and different things are done in different regions. So that's very costly to maintain for any process, and referrals are no exception to that, right?
Yeah, no, that again, complete makes complete sense. If I sort of cast my mind back 5 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. 10 years ago, when social media was kind of growing as a recruiting channel, there was an actual kind of explosion of referral technologies and referral schemes based around social. Looking at your white paper, the social referrals as a channel are actually the worst converting. Why is that, and where does social media sort of fit into this? Now it's kind of matured and with us all the time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually read it. Thanks. So perfect. That's a good start. It makes sense, right? So we have this feature called social referrals where I can share a unique link out that anybody that uses that link I want to get credit for. And it's one of those necessary evils in my mind of just like how people work. You need to remove the resistance to being able to participate in something like an employee referral program. So, hey, boom, I take this. I have a bunch of followers on Facebook. Hey, guys, we're hiring a nurse. Check it out, right? So I think you need that, but it makes perfect sense on why it converts less because I may not know who's clicking it. I didn't have that real conversation with them. So in the paper, we mentioned of those million referrals, 30% of them were social shares, right? Created by just sharing a link, whether that's a text message, LinkedIn, whatever. 15% of the hires were social shares, right? So it's quite literally the half the quality of what you would expect. There's not a one-to-one conversion on it. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it converts less, but I'll tell you that is a very industry specific feature as well. We work with, for example, like kind of in manufacturing and also high volume call centers. Like those are features that just get abused, like boom, 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 like sharing it everywhere. In more intentional rules like accounting, or even believe it or not, even in technology, like it may not be used as much. Especially, I think it's used less when you have more community driven hires, meaning like, hey, I'm a developer, you're a developer, so I'm going to tell you specifically about this job to see if you want in or not. But if it's a high turnover role, hey, you need a job. This is good for the next 6 months here. Yeah. Right. So, how we interact, it is industry specific, region as well. I will tell you in some areas, like we do a lot in the Philippines and India. I mean, we didn't know people could have that many referrals. Right? I'm talking thousands per individual for a single job, right?
Wow.
Like crazy, right? So it really like, so I'd say that's a feature I don't think anybody has turned off at this point. We used to make it it's optional and people turn it on and off, but it's interesting to see like you kind of feel like you need it, but some of them actually do need it. It really just depends on your hiring objectives.
I suppose related to that, do incentives make a difference here? Financial incentives or other types of incentives? How does that kind of fit in?
They do to a point, right? So what I mean by that, and we've done a lot of blog posts on this and stuff. If I pay you $1,500 or $3,000 for a referral, I'm probably getting the same result, right? So the incentives matter. Now, if I don't pay you anything, it's way different than if I pay you $1,000, right? Even paying you nothing versus $200 is a big difference. So you have to have some kind of incentive. In what I find is that it's best when it is aligned with the difficulty of filling that role, because that's the message you're sending back to your employees. It's not really, is there a difference between giving you $6,000 or $10,000 because you hired this attorney? Really, no. You're going to do it because that's a lot of money either way, right? But what it does say is, hey, we would have spent $60,000 recruiting this person, so we are proportionally sharing that with you. And we have a lot of customers that have taken that hardline approach of just what would we have paid somebody to fill this role externally, and we'll proportionally have a model that aligns that with our internal incentives. So it sends the right message to the employees. And we've had some people make more than their salaries in referral bonuses in a single year, right? It's happened 2 or 3 times, which is pretty impressive. Like, but think about how, like, you might pay somebody 70 grand for getting 20 hires for you. But imagine how much that 20 hires would have cost the organization to bring in, especially through external means or temporary staffing.
So you talked about this a little bit at the beginning when you were talking about AI and the need to talk to humans and the differentiation and all that kind of stuff. Just to finish off with, give us a little bit more about what you think the future looks like in this area. Are there other effects that AI is gonna have? How might we be talking about this in a couple of years' time?
Yeah, I mean, so this is how you get me going. I'll try to keep it short for you. But look, there's no doubt that technology advancements are going to just completely shake up what we would say are like knowledge or information jobs. Some things like redundant tasks, like recruiting, even accounting, even lawyers, I think are all at risk. And it's one challenge that I always like to put out there is like if I have some young children, what can you really look them in the face and say, this is what you should go to college for because the job's still going to exist 15 years from now? It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to think about. I mean, even your highly regarded jobs are going to be replaced by computers. I'm talking to the point of like doctors, right? Not entirely, but it will happen. We're seeing this in software development. Entry-level software development is on the chopping block, and you're going to create a talent gap, which will be very problematic for future generations, right?
Yeah.
However, the question is what kind of society are we going to have by the time we realize the talent gap? And I think you have two options. Maybe there's an in between, but I like having the two options, right? So the one is what's the Hunger Games? Like, I volunteer as tribute, right? Like, you got this huge divide between the wealth and the wealthy, or in the wealthless, I would say, where I have to like go fight people with a bow and arrow.
I was going to say essential skills for kids, archery.
Yeah, exactly. I can start practicing now. So that's or you have this other result where you ever see the movie Wall-E, the Disney animated movie, where all the people are like they're huge, they're floating around in chairs, none of them work, they're just hanging out, living their best lives. Like which path does AI get us to? Is it huge wealth differences in society, or is it a better world for everyone together? Obviously, there's probably a middle, but my point being is that you're going to have this elimination of jobs at scale, and how we respond to that is. I'll tell you one thing: if I know anything about the U.S. government, is that we will respond to it too late, and how we respond to that as society and how we direct people to address that. It's going to be, I mean, a first of its kind event, right? The only other way that just us just being friends here, Matt. The only other way that you might see this addressed is that you legislate against AI in a lot of ways to prevent things like mass unemployment, right?
Yeah.
Because eventually, I mean, you will have people with pitchforks saying, "Yeah, I don't know if anybody's a South Park fan, but like, you took our jobs, right?" Like can society operate with 20% unemployment? I'd say the answer is probably no, at least not this society. So one way that we do that is we force people to still have to work and say, hey, we're not going to let the computers take your jobs. Go pick this thing up and put it back down 100 times a day, and we'll keep you employed, right? So it's going to be an interesting, wild time.
It certainly is.
And,
For people listening, please tell us: is it pitchforks and bows and arrows, or big comfy chairs? We want to hear what you think.
Three options. You're right. We got
yeah, exactly. Mike, thank you very much for talking to us. It's a situation, so let's move on to the situation room. Hey, Jocelyn, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good. How about you?
I'm good. So what do you think? Bows and arrows or big comfy chairs?
I really like the Hunger Game idea. I thought that was great.
Excellent. So what do you have? Actually, what you got for this week is very much along the same line. So tell us what you found.
Yeah, so it's an employee who is interested in the way that his or her company is going to be adopting AI. And how it's going to impact essentially him and his department. And what he's really trying to get at is, am I going to lose my job, right? And so, when this comes up, it's coming up more and more, of course, where we have employees coming to us as HR, stating their concerns around what's going to happen with my job. I'm in customer support. I hear customer support's being replaced at, Klarna. And so what does that mean for me? And it's a really hard conversation to have. And I think something that can be difficult, but it's just so important, is maintaining that transparency and open communication with your employees, and just being honest about the company's overall AI strategy, how that AI strategy is going to impact employees. You could host like a Q&A session maybe, or some type of discussion that directly addresses the fears and uncertainties that employees have.
Mm.
Um, and as you're speaking to them, I think there are some really key things that you can do to, as an HR professional, you're always worried, of course, people might leave, right? You don't want to say the wrong thing and then not have a workforce and have to replace somebody else. But you also want to be very fair and honest. So, framing AI as more of an assistant and not so much of a replacement. So, really emphasizing that it's designed to assist with those repetitive tasks and allows employees to work more in kind of that creative or strategic space. And if you can, even highlighting examples where AI has enhanced productivity without eliminating jobs. So, looking for kind of that example out there, I think could prove to be really helpful. But, if it's true that as part of your AI strategy, you will be replacing jobs, what does that mean to your workforce? You can start providing upskilling or reskilling opportunities to your employees as well. So offering training programs that help them learn how to work alongside HR, and really encouraging professional development and kind of like human skills, like more creativity or problem solving or emotional intelligence. Like those are all irreplaceable. So how do we train people on that? And then another thing, and this would probably be really interesting for this individual employee who's interested in how AI is being implemented in their department, is actually involving employees in the AI implementation. So seeking their input on how AI can make their work easier and more efficient. And it allows you at that point to also address concerns openly and then make them feel like they're a part of that change rather than subject to it.
Yeah, I think that it's all, they're all really good points. I think the reskilling one is really interesting because I can see a time in the future where, these companies who might have replaced lots of people with AI, are going to be moaning that they don't have the durable skills, as we were talking about last week, creativity, teamwork, all these kind of things that they can't find people that have them. So what a great opportunity to actually help people with that now, to emphasize that importance and to kind of reskill for beyond this AI world. So I think that it's something that do you think companies are doing that already, or is it
Mm,
just not happening?
I don't know. I'm sure some of them are. I haven't heard about it a ton yet. I think probably because people are still trying to figure out what do those skills really need to look like, right? I mean, and this kind of ties into it a bit, Matt. It's this idea of how do we highlight new opportunities that AI creates? So as HR professionals, I think we probably need to be a bit more educated on what type of roles AI is creating and then how we can showcase that to our workforce. So these would be like AI trainers, like data analysts, or what's the new one? Automation, the AI prompter or something,
Mm, mm.
automation supervisors, right? And kind of, even if you don't have that ready at your organization today, provide examples of companies that have been doing that, and then
Mm.
start implementing some of that into your reskilling and career ladder programs.
Yeah, and I think that there is this kind of confusion about, well, what are the skills that we're going to need and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the macro work has done. If you look at the World Economic Forum, there's an organisation in the UK that's done research around this as well. The impact of AI, uh, a kind of a high level, has already been worked out in terms of the type of jobs that might be displaced, how quickly that might happen, what skills those people might have that are transferable. So that data is out there, and I think it's important that companies tap into that and really think about it strategically. Because I think the other thing, I mean, obviously layoffs are very much in the news at the moment on a daily basis for lots of not very good reasons. But I think there's another two things that kind of strike me about this. You mentioned honesty there, and I think that a number of organizations are laying people off for performance issues, or whatever that might be, and the real reason is probably that They want AI to do those jobs, or they want less people in the company. So, there's no honesty there. And then the flip side is you have companies laying people off because they're going to be replaced by AI, only to find that they've moved a little bit ahead of the market a little bit too quickly and are having to kind of backfill because the AI can't quite do what they thought it would do. Again, it's a bit of a Klarna situation. So that honesty is really important, isn't it? Because it's a very confusing situation for everyone, I think.
It is. And I think one of the most important things we need to do as HR professionals, as leaders in organizations, is adopting a people-first approach to AI. So rather than just going around and firing 1,000 people and hoping the AI works and it doesn't, how about demonstrating some leadership commitment to retain and grow your talent alongside alongside AI, for example? Or, if a role just naturally evolves as AI continues to enhance, working with employees to ensure that they transition into new meaningful positions, either within the company or even outside of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's as I say, the direction of travel is clear, but how we get there isn't. And I think that companies are going to regret not being honest with people, because at the same time, there are loads of things that need to be sorted out for this kind of AI replacement to work properly, whether that's, processes or really understanding what kind of goes on. And employees play a huge role in doing that, in understanding how the actual business works and how it could evolve moving forward.
Yeah.
Totally. Jocelyn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you.
Pleasure. Okay. Rhona, how you doing? Do you have a bow and arrow?
I do not.
Question. AI is driving us all to the forests or something at the moment. I can tell this beer's got alcohol in it. Anyway, also I keep drinking all the way through these segments, and when they get cut up and put on the web, it looks like I'm just constant. There's no context to why I'm drinking this beer, so I worry about my image. What do you have for us?
So today I'm talking about student loan debt, and really we all know about this, especially here in the US. This is a big personal finance headache for people, but it's really reshaping the workforce in ways that employers really can't afford to ignore anymore. There was this research from Mission Square that showed that 62% of private sector employees and 56% in the public sector factor in student debt into job decisions. And only even more telling is that only a third of these workers feel committed to staying with their current employer. Now, here's where it really gets interesting for me. Some companies are starting to see student debt relief as a strategic advantage, and they're offering it, presenting and positioning it as a perk. When you get your benefits and your perks, they're saying how they help you with that. For example, Abbott links student loan repayments to 401k contributions. And this all sounds really good, but I don't know. I can't help but think, like, is this really a perk? Or are we really inadvertently normalizing the struggle rather than addressing the root cause? And does it really build loyalty and increase retention, which is what you would want with a perk, right? Yes, you're supporting your employees and you're helping them with that. But that really isn't the problem. I think the real opportunity for companies here is to step up in meaningful ways. And yes, I 100% get it, and I'm going to say it. It's not the employer's responsibility to solve this issue. This crisis that we're in is really the responsibility of the government, financial institutions, and higher education institutions. However, I think companies can really reduce that unnecessary emphasis on degrees for roles that don't require them. And we've spoken about this a lot, really prioritizing skills and experience over credentials when possible, of course. That's going to help people avoid feeling that pressure to go into debt in the first place.
Mm.
And then also, if you really like, if I were working at a company and they come and it's like, oh, I can help you with your student debt, the real way to help me is to compensate me fairly so that I can truly see return on my investment, which was getting a degree and getting that loan. And if I have enough money to live and to pay off my debt, that's the real support that I want from a company. So, what do you
Mm.
think, Matt? Is this something that's trending? Should it be trending? Should it end soon?
Yeah, I mean, student debt is a growing issue in the UK as well. There are other European countries where it doesn't actually exist because you don't have to necessarily pay tuition fees or things like that. But it's certainly an issue in the UK. People are leaving university kind of ever more in debt. A few things about this. I suppose the first thing about the research that we were looking at itself, it didn't quite add up for me because it was saying that people saw student debt as a kind of a hindrance to their career, but then it also said that employers that people who are heavily in student debt work harder and seek career advancements to sort of pay off their debt, which was a kind of a strange comparison. And I thought that employers wanting to employ people who are in debt because they work harder is just I just don't like it at all. And it used to be a really big thing in recruitment agencies in the UK about sort of 10, 20 years ago. It was like, if we employ people with lots of debt, they'll work really hard and make lots of money. And I think that's just a really horrendous way to think about motivation. So I think that's part of it. Employers kind of engaging with this. I think you're right. I think it has to be paying people fairly for what they do, not trying to lowball people or undercut people, or all the things that we know happens. But yeah, ultimately it does come down to why do we go to college? What and who pays for that? And I think there's a huge thing here. I think in the US and the UK that we're getting to this point that says, is it really worth it? Is it worth me doing it if I can get into the workforce in other ways and not be in this huge amount of debt? Now, from a personal perspective, I do think that's terrible because I think that college, university, as well as allegedly giving you skills for the world of work, which again we've discussed before that perhaps it doesn't. It does certainly give people exposure to more critical thinking, to more experiences, and I think that's a great thing for society as a whole. So I think that's an important thing that we can't lose here. But yeah, I think overall employers kind of being more understanding of the circumstances that their employees are in is a good thing. I don't think it should be used as a kind of a motivation in that way. But actually, if employers want to, kind of want to help people, then why not?
Yeah, I agree with the points that you said, and also where it's just I go back to it. If you're trying to hire someone and appeal to their debt and think that that's going to make them stay,
Yeah.
that's not how you build loyalty. It just really isn't. And from personal experience, so I was blessed and lucky to not study here in the US. So my country, university is accessible to everyone. And I went to private university. So yeah, I did pay for it. But I think just graduating and not having that stress of you're going to have to pay for this for the rest of your life pretty much, because there's no job that will ever, like, you can't live and pay for that. I think that's really where we need to go through. And like I said, companies can't solve that, but they can solve it if they stop putting this huge emphasis on degrees that aren't always needed. But I agree with you. Like, my university years really gave me a lot of knowledge that I couldn't have gotten anywhere else. Not so much like for work knowledge, but like access to and like interface with people in different perspectives and all of that. So yes, I'm pro higher education, of course, but I just think I don't feel that companies should really be using it as this strategic thing, like, ooh, if they're in debt and we're helping them pay for debt, then that's a perk and they'll stay with us longer, because it's not true.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's very true. I don't think that is true from a retention perspective. I think that the other thing that I would say is I think there's an empathy gap here as well, because I left university quite some time ago, a few decades ago, and comparatively speaking, at the time I thought I was in debt. Comparatively speaking, I was in no debt at all. I think I'd cleared any debt that I had within about 18 months of leaving. And there are lots of people in my generation who are running companies or are in the government, who that was their experience. They do not have the experience of the crippling debt that people are faced with, stuff that they'll have for their whole career, their whole lives, all this kind of stuff. So I think there is this massive gap in understanding and empathy about that. And I think that people like me can look back at the golden age of university and, I learned all these great things, but I didn't really have to pay for it for very long into my career. And I think that's another piece that kind of really complicates that. I don't think people really give enough empathy or understanding to people who are in this position.
Yeah, very, very good call out, because it's true. Yeah, there's that gap. And like I said, I have it as well, kind of like not understanding, but I do see it, like the way the debt that people are in right now, it's very different from back when we were in university.
Yeah, and I think if we fast forward another 10 years, 20 years at the same trajectory, there's a point where it becomes unmanageable. And maybe that's where companies really cash in terms of, doing that skills-based thing, looking beyond degrees and just getting, effectively competing with universities for talent. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that already. But certainly want to watch for the future. Rhona, thank you so much for joining us. I hope your cocktail didn't make you sneeze.
No, it was actually really good. It was really good as it went through. So yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, we'll talk to you next week.
See you next week.
Okay, that brings us to the end of another show. So much other stuff coming up on Purple Acorn. So tomorrow you can tune in to the HR Morning Show. That's on at 7 a.m. West Coast, 10 a.m. East Coast. Then on Wednesdays, Hire Her, Talent Collective podcast, which is on at 11 a.m. West Coast, 2 p.m. East Coast. Then My First Job with Mike Wood on Thursdays, From the Desk with Jada Montemurano on Fridays. So much Blue Acorn. Blue Acorn? It's this beer, I'm sorry. So much Purple Acorn content out there to consume. You can check out the longer form interviews that I do on the Recruiting Future podcast. And of course, the Alder Hour will be back this time next Monday. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.